In this video, you'll be watching an excerpt from our AutoCAD Level 2 class. The topic we are covering is dynamic blocks. So a dynamic block is a block that has an automated way to change form. To create a dynamic block inside of Block Editor, you must create a parameter and assign it an action. Parameter creates the button grip, and an action assigns what the button does. So these are the major things to know. Step 1 is create a parameter. Step 2 is assign an action. So you'll see that when we start working on it. We're going to create 3 dynamic blocks. The first one will be a window, and this window will be a stretching block. So here's a screenshot of what that window looks like. So this is like a top view, a window that you would put on a floor plan. So this is the frame, and this is the frame, and then in the middle, that's the glass. There is a video in the book, so if you forget the steps, you can always go back and watch the video in the book. We're going to create a second one, which is a door. We already have a door in our AutoCAD floor plan drawing, so we'll just take one of those doors, and then we're going to turn it into a flipping block. So sometimes doors open from the right side, sometimes from the left side, sometimes they open in, sometimes they open out. So we'll have a block that can flip 4 different directions. And then the last one is just going to be called shapes, and it's a visibility block. So this block will have a menu, and then from the menu, we'll be able to pick what the block looks like. Does it look like a circle or a square or a triangle? Yep. So again, you may not be drawing windows and doors and just shapes in your career, but this example will give you an idea of how it works, how the tools work. So the door, we already have doors, but the window we might have to draw. So we can do this either in model space or inside of the viewport. I think, let's see, because it's kind of messy in model space. Let's go in sheet 2 and let's go inside the viewport. Fix your UCS. Go to UCS view. All right, so inside the viewport, UCS view. And then if you can see the dimensions in this PowerPoint on the side, the frame of the window is just going to be rectangles, 6 inches by 2 inches. The glass panel is going to be 24 inches long, 1 inch thick. So it's like a double pane glass. And then another frame here is the same as the one on the left. So I'll give you a few minutes to try to draw that window. Draw it either in the room or outside of the house first. We'll move it onto the wall later. Another thing that's important is we should be on layer 0. CAD Masters offers online and classroom training for a variety of Autodesk software. For more information, go to www.cadmasters.com or give us a call at 925-939-1378. All right, so we have it drawn. It's not yet a block. First, let's move this block. And I'm just going to have you watch me first. I'm going to move it from the midpoint of the frame, and I want to have it centered on this wall. But if you see me moving it here, it's not quite the same width as the wall. So to find the middle of that wall, the center line of that wall, I'm going to use shift right click to get to that mid between 2 points snap. The shortcut is M2P. I use mid between 2 points, and I have to pick 2 points on the wall. I don't need ortho. I can use nearest on this side of the wall, nearest on that side of the wall, and it should snap it so that it's centered. Okay. So give that a try. I'll put the snap in the chat. All right, so once it's centered, the reason I had us do that now is because when we turn this into a block, I want the insertion point to be where the frame meets the wall. That way, when we place it around the different walls here, it'll be easy to snap it to the wall. So here, let's turn it into a block. We'll use B for block. The name, we'll just call window. And we'll use this pick point button to specify the insertion point. Again, I want this intersection right here. Okay, so that's that one. Over here, we need to use a select objects button. Select the pieces of the window. Enter. And then we're converting it to a block. Over here, we do not want it to be annotative. This window should be drawn to the real world dimensions of that window. We don't want it to shrink or get bigger randomly. So don't check that. Scale uniformly, sure. Allow exploding, sure. Inches is probably correct for this window. But if you want to choose unitless, that would also be okay. So I'll let it be up to you, inches or unitless, either way. And then open in block editor. We do need to open it in block editor to make it a dynamic block. So that's checked, and then click OK. All right. So let me make this bigger now. So in block editor, you have this gray background. You have access to all the original components of that block. And you should have this palette called block authoring palette. If for some reason you don't have this, up at the top right, you have block editor, the blue tab. And right here is the authoring palette button. So blue means it should be displayed, and then gray means it's hidden. So make sure that's blue.
Okay.
So authoring palette, just like anything else, you can like move it around, dock it on the side. But we want to start on the parameters tab. So the parameter is always step one. Parameter will give us an extra grip that we can use to stretch the object, rotate the object, have a menu come out. It's that extra grip for a dynamic block. And then you want to pick one that's appropriate for what you're trying to do. So we are trying to stretch the window. I want this to get horizontally longer or shorter. So in a house, you have different size windows, right? So to stretch it horizontally, I'll use this linear parameter. So let's click on linear. And we want to use it kind of like a dimension. I want to show the current dimension of that glass. So I'm going to click using an endpoint snap from this side of the glass to the other side of the glass. And then I'm going to place that distance 1 right there. Okay. So the distance 1 is called the parameter. And these light blue triangles are called, or will become, the grips. So when we finish all of this, these are the grips that we can use to stretch the window. I only want to stretch this window to the right. I don't want to stretch it to the left. So I want to remove one of those grips. To remove the grip, select distance 1. We can right click to open properties. And then at the very bottom of properties, it says number of grips 2. And so I don't need 2, I just want 1. We'll switch it to 1. Notice how it removes the left grip and it keeps the right grip. So it just depends which way you drew that parameter. If you draw it from left to right, it keeps the second one. If you draw it from right to left, it'll still keep the second one, but the second one will be on this side. So this is fine. This is the correct way I want it to be. So I have 1 grip now. I'm going to leave properties open. I'm going to dock my palette on the left here so we have both. So I have created the parameter. This is distance 1. This is the grip. Step number 2 is to assign it an action. So go to the Actions tab. I'm trying to stretch the window, so I need a stretch action. All right, so go to stretch. And you might want to watch first, and you can do this after. It says to select the parameter in the command line. I'll select distance 1. Then it says to specify the parameter point. I want to click on this grip, the light blue triangle. Then it says specify a first corner of stretch frame. So similar to the AutoCAD stretch command, you want to draw a window from the right side to the left side, but you don't want to grab the whole shape. You want to stop halfway. The geometry that's completely inside of the blue rectangle will be held. The geometry that's completely outside of the blue rectangle will be held. The objects that are halfway in, halfway out of this rectangle, those are the objects that will stretch. So just the 2 glass panes, those 2 lines are going to be the ones that are stretching. So this, also, we want to make sure we're not just grabbing the window, but we're grabbing distance 1, the parameter, because we're also stretching the parameter. Okay, so I will click here. So that blue rectangle is going to stretch distance 1 and this line and this line. But if you look at the command line, it now says select objects. You're going to do kind of the same type of window inside of the blue, clicking from the upper right to the lower left. This green window is actually the window that stretches the line work. So the blue window stretches the parameter and the green window stretches the line work. But usually you make them pretty much the same. Okay, so now everything is selected. I'll hit enter. And when you hit enter, this little symbol shows up. If I hover, it tells me it's a stretch action. The X will just hide the action. It won't actually delete it. If you messed up, you can right click and delete, or you can go to action selection set and modify. So we'll do that later. For right now, I want you to try adding the stretch action. All right, so to test this out, we could test it out in model space, but there's another option up in the ribbon on the far left. There is a button to save the block. And then after you save it, there's a button to test the block. So we want to test the block. So we are still in block editor, but we're in this different mode where it looks like it would in model space. So in model space, it would look like this. When you select it, you would see the single insertion point grip, and then you would see an additional triangle grip that is for stretching. So click on the triangle grip and then move your cursor. It should allow you to stretch. Well, if your snaps are on, it might snap you like that. So you might want to turn off your snaps. So now that's our first round. We made it stretch. We're going to do a few more things. Up in the ribbon on the right side, you can close the test block. CAD Masters offers online and classroom training for a variety of Autodesk software. For more information, go to www.cadmasters.com or give us a call at 925-939-1378. So green check mark. We're back into normal block editor. And let's say I don't want to just stretch the window to a random size. I want to stretch it to specific widths. So to add specific widths, click on distance 1. Go to properties, and then under value set, you'll see distance type is none. So none just means I can stretch it randomly. I want to switch that. There is increment and there is list. So increment, you could say like, oh, I get to stretch it in increments of 1 foot or increments of 6 inches, something like that. But it's like infinite. You can keep going. List gives just a very specific list of widths. So my window can only be 2 feet or 3 feet or 4 feet or 5 feet, and that's it, right? I just give specific distances. So let's use list. And then the distance list has 2 feet. That's the original 24 inches. Click on the 2 feet. There's a button on the right. Click on the button. And here we get to add. So I always forget if we should be using inches or feet. So what we could do is use either quotation for inches or apostrophe for feet, and then it'll come out correct. So let's do 3 apostrophe add, 4 apostrophe add, 5 apostrophe add. So we'll just have 4 different sizes. Click OK. And if you zoom out, you should see these little tick marks. So this is 2 feet, 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet. And then we want to test that. So escape in the upper left, save it, and test it. So you get to click on it, use a little triangle grip, but you'll see those little white tick marks. It will only allow you to stretch up to those lines, no more, no less. Good so
Okay.
far?
Yes.
Cool. All right, so that was our second round. We added those distances. Third round, we're going to now create a menu. So instead of guessing, like, I don't know how long this is, I'm stretching to that line, but how long is that, right? Instead of guessing, we can create a menu, and then the menu could say 24-inch window, 36-inch window, etc. And we can choose from that menu. So back up at the ribbon on the right side, close test block. Back into block editor. We need to create an additional grip. This triangle grip is for stretching manually. We want another triangle grip for a menu. So go back to parameters. In the parameters tab, we're going to use lookup. So lookup is for a menu. And then we just need to place it somewhere. I'm going to place it right here. Right there, lookup 1. These can also be renamed. So if I click on lookup 1, where is it? Right here, property labels. You could change it and call it menu or something, but it's not that important. Okay, so lookup 1. Now, how do I set up that menu? Let's go to the actions tab. From the actions tab, there is a lookup action. Click on that. The command line says select the parameter. The parameter is lookup 1. And then this window, when I was first learning it, I thought, okay, this doesn't really make too much sense. But now I understand it. So if you are confused, you can always watch the video. The video will go over the steps for this. Okay, so there is a input column and there is a properties column. So we have to add a property, and a property comes from what we already set up. We already set up properties for distance 1. So let's click add properties. And here you'll see distance 1 is already in there. So that's what we're using. Click OK. Oh, wait, not if you click OK, that's all right. But down here, you have 2 choices. You can use the properties from here, from distance 1, to fill in the input column. Or you can use the properties from distance 1 to fill up this properties column. And so I like it to be in the input column. So it's input and then OK. So here distance 1 shows up. When you click on distance 1, there's a drop down and you can pick 2 feet. And then if you click below the 2 feet, you can use a drop down again, pick 3 feet. So we're just filling in all this information that came from the properties. This is what your window will look at to fix the size of the window. This is the information that it will use to adjust its size. Then over here, this is what you're going to see in the menu. So for the menu, I want it to say 24-inch window. 36-inch window, 48-inch window, and I believe it's 60-inch window. Click OK. All right, so once you've added the lookup action to the lookup parameter, you see that symbol shows up again. If you hover, it should say lookup. And then we will test this out. This time, let's test it in model space. So at the top, close the block editor. It will ask you, do you want to save it? Yes, we want to save it. Okay, so I'm back in model. Well, I'm in paper, but I'm inside the viewport. And so I can click on the window. I can see there's a stretching grip and I can see there's a menu grip. So let's try the menu grip. There's my menu, and then just test it out. So I like to add an additional step that's not in the video. Our window looks good, but you can still see the wall, the green wall here. So what I want to do is I want the wall behind the window to be hidden. And so if the window stretches, it will hide any wall that's behind that window. Okay, so we can use something called a wipeout. From the Annotate tab of the ribbon, there's this button called wipeout. Have you ever used that?
No.
Okay, so wipeout, it doesn't trim or delete or cut. It just hides things. And so maybe you bring in a PDF of a detail and your boss is like, hey, can you just edit this one thing in that detail? And you're like, I can't, it's a PDF. But you can use a wipeout to cover something on the PDF and then put AutoCAD text on top of it. So like a whiteout, but it's a wipeout. All right. We need to create this inside of the block so that it will stretch with the block. So select the block. You can right click to open block editor. We're back in the block editor and we have all our stuff going on in here. Go to the Annotate tab of the ribbon. So you have access to all these tabs when you're in block editor.
Yes.
So yeah, Annotate tab and then use wipeout. And if you want to watch me first, you can. I'm going to start by just using my endpoint snap and snapping to the 4 outer corners of the window. But see how it wipes out or hides those lines?
Yeah.
I want this wipeout rectangle to be a little bit larger because the wall has like a thickness when you print it. And so we need this to be just a little bit larger. It's not going to be a perfect rectangle at this point, but I will try to use ortho. So I'm going to pull it out just a little bit more like that. So just vertically up and down. Oops. And then after I've stretched it, I want to do a right click, display order, and send it to the back because I want to still see my window. So now it's behind. Okay, so give that a try. Let me know when you're done. All right, so you can just watch. So if I leave it like this and I close the block editor and save it, when I get into my project, I can see the wipeout and I can stretch my window, but the wipeout is not stretching along with the window. So what I need to do is go back into the block editor and I need to edit the stretching action. Let me regen. Okay, so this you can do with me. Click on your stretch action. Oops, right click on your stretch action and then go to action selection set. And we're going to, so I could either modify or new, and I'm not sure of the difference. So let's try modify. And so now it allows me to reselect the objects, I believe. So I'm going to click from here to here, just like I did before, but now the wipeout's included. And then again, from here to here. After that second rectangle, I'll hit enter. And then let's close block editor, save it. And then now test the menu. So hopefully wipeout is moving with the block. Okay. So we see the window, we see the wipeout, everything's working properly, but I actually don't want to see that wipeout frame. So I put in the chat, you can set the wipeout frame equal to 0. That should turn it off. 1 equals show. 0 equals hide. So let's type wipeout frame. And then 0. Once it's turned off, you can test it again. It should work nicely. So let's, I mean, you don't have to spend too much time on this, but let's try to insert a few more windows around the outer walls of the house. So yeah, just, you could either use the insert command, or you could go to insert tab, insert button. It should be the last thing because it's alphabetical. And it should just be able to snap to the wall. So if you turn on your nearest snap, it shouldn't be too difficult to snap it to the wall. So basically what I want you to do is have a few of them and they're all different sizes. All right, so we did our first dynamic block, which was this window that was stretching. Then our second one is a door. So we'll just grab one of the doors we already have, and then we'll bring it into the block editor to make it a flipping block. CAD Masters offers online and classroom training for a variety of Autodesk software. For more information, go to www.cadmasters.com or give us a call at 925-939-1378. So still here, I'm going to zoom in, make sure you're in the model. Take one of the doors and let's make sure that it is on layer 0. We also want to make sure all the properties are set by layer. So color by layer, line type by layer, plot style, all these things. If you don't have everything by layer, those settings can get stuck and then you won't be able to make them by layer later on. You won't be able to change them later on. So you want to make sure right now it starts on layer 0 and everything's by layer. So we have just the basic line work that we need. So we're going to turn this into a block, type B, enter. We're going to call this door. Use the pick point button. And again, we're clicking where the door meets the wall. Select objects button. I'm going to select the entire door, all the pieces. Enter. We're going to convert that to a block. 6 objects were selected. Over on the right, we do not want to use annotative. Scale uniformly is fine. Allow exploding is fine. For units, either inches or unitless. And we do want to open in block editor. Click OK. So in the block editor, we have to always start with that parameters tab, right? So parameters tab. This time we're trying to flip the door back and forth. It can open from the left, open from the right, open inwards, open outwards. So there is a parameter called flip, and it works kind of like the mirror command. So I'll click on the flip parameter. It asks me for a base point of reflection line. So if I were to use the mirror command, let's say I want to flip the door from top to bottom. I would be reflecting across a line that goes from midpoint to midpoint. Or if you have ortho on, you can just draw a horizontal line. So midpoint to midpoint. And then you're going to place this text, flip state 1. All right, this little triangle or arrow grip comes along with flip state 1. If you don't like the location, you can pick up the grip, the blue grip, the square grip, and move it a little bit. I just moved it off of the object. This yellow exclamation point, I believe it just means we don't have an action yet. We have a parameter, but it doesn't have an action. So let's go over to the Actions tab. And looking throughout here, we have a flip action. So I'll use flip. It says to select the parameter, which is flip state 1. It says to select the objects. I don't need to flip the frame. The frame's going to stay in the wall. I just need to flip the swing and the door. So I'm just using a window to select them. It doesn't really matter. You could click on them individually. The window is not that important. Once they're selected, hit enter. And you get this little flip action. If I hover, it should say flip 1. Cool. So let's test it out. In the upper left of the ribbon, let's save the block and test the block. So when you select the door, you should see 2 grips, a square grip, the insertion point, and an arrow grip, the flipping grip. So click the arrow and hopefully it flips. So now we're going to try to flip it left and right. Let's close the test block. Back in block editor, we're going to add another parameter and another action. So from the parameters tab, still using flip. But this time I need to draw a vertical line down the middle. There is no midpoint that I can snap to. So I'm going to use the mid between 2 points snap. And I'm going to go from, I'll use my endpoint snap. I'm going to go from this corner to this corner, and I want to draw a vertical line. Flip state 2 shows up. I'll just put that right in the middle. And it comes along with the blue triangle or blue arrow. You can scooch it down if you like. And so that yellow exclamation point tells us we don't have an action yet. So go back to the Actions tab. Use a flip action. And we'll select parameter 2 or flip state 2. And again, same objects, just the door and the swing. Enter. So action shows up there. And so you can either test it in the test block or you can test it in model space. I'll just test mine in model space. So I'll close the block editor. Save the changes. And I'm back in model space. I can select the door and I see the 2 triangles or the 2 arrows, and then try the flipping. So the last one that we're going to do for dynamic blocks is shapes. And it's called a visibility block. It'll have a menu, and from the menu, you'll be able to pick out which shape you want to see. Let's go into the model tab, and let's just do this on the side. I don't care how big or small you make this, just draw a circle. So circle will be our first shape, and then in block editor, we'll add the other shapes. So let's turn the circle into a block, B, enter. The name, call it shapes. Pick point. Let's use the center of the circle. Select objects. We'll select the circle, enter. And we'll convert it to a block, 1 object selected. Over on the right, same stuff. It's not annotative, but we can allow scaling, allow exploding. inches is fine, and open in block editor. Once you get into the block editor, this one is a little bit different than the others. You still need to start with a parameter. We need a grip for that menu. And then that parameter will be called a visibility parameter. I'll just put it right here. That's where my menu is going to be. However, there is no action for visibility. All of the visibility actions will take place in the ribbon. So block editor ribbon should have this visibility panel. So to create the action or to add some actual information to this, it will all come from this ribbon panel, visibility. Right now, there's a drop down, and in that drop down, we only see visibility state 0. This is just a default visibility state. We need to add additional states. So we're going to have a square, a triangle, and a circle. Click the button, visibility states. This is kind of like setting up the menu that's going to come out of this grip. So I want to rename visibility state 0. I'm going to click the rename button and call this one circle. Then I'll make a new visibility state. I'll call this one square. Out of these 3 options, I like using leave visibility of existing objects unchanged in new state. That means nothing is going to disappear on you. You get to control what is showing and what is hidden. So using that 3rd option and click OK. And we need to create one more. Click new and call it triangle. Same 3rd option there. Click OK. So once we get the menu working, we'll be able to see circle, square, triangle, and we'll be able to click on them. So right now, just click OK. If you go back to the ribbon, it says triangle or something, but if you use a drop down, you'll see there are the 3 states. So if you click on circle, it looks great. It's a circle. But if you click on square, obviously we don't have a square here. So we need to fix this visibility state. Leave square selected, and let's draw a square. I want to have this square centered on the circle. So instead of using rectangle or drawing it manually, I like to use polygon. You can use POL, or from the Home tab, Draw Panel, there's polygon. Command line asks for the number of sides. We want 4 sides. It asks for a center point. I want to use a center snap right there. And in this case, I don't care if it's inscribed or circumscribed. Either one is fine. And I don't care like which direction it's going. It's up to you. Once you have that square drawn, go back to the block editor tab. So I'm on the square visibility state. I don't want to see the circle. There are some buttons above the word square. So this last button is make invisible. I'm going to use that button to make my circle invisible. So I'll click the button, click the circle, enter, and now the circle is gone. Okay, so we're going to test our menu again. From the drop down, circle looks great. Square looks great. Triangle is not done. So I want you to try to do the same steps and do the triangle state. All right, so we're going to do one more. These 3 are looking good. Let's go back to visibility states. And let's create a new one. And let's call it just for fun. So my new just for fun state, click OK. So just for fun is now in this list. So just for fun selected. Above that, there's a green square called make visible. So I can click that green button and it shows the invisible objects in gray. That way I can select them. So I want to select the circle and the square and hit enter. So I can see all those shapes at the same time. Let me show you one more thing. If I go into, let's say, circle, I can click this button, which has the solid square and the dash square. This will just display, again, any invisible objects in gray. If I click that again, it hides them. But anyways, let's go back to just for fun. So in the just for fun, I see all my shapes. I'll give you a few minutes to make it colorful. So go to the home tab, the draw panel, and you can use hatch. So yeah, go ahead and use hatch and add some different colors and patterns to this. So now go back to the block editor tab and we'll use the close block editor green check. Back in model space, we're going to test it out. Select your circle. Notice it has an insertion point grip and a menu grip. Click the menu and then just test it out. CAD Masters offers online and classroom training for a variety of Autodesk software. For more information, go to www.cadmasters.com or give us a call at 925-939-1378.